welcome. The of the African Digital Leadership Innovation Network based in Luxembourg, and with also affiliates in Africa. And also with me today is Mr. Marcin Jablonski, who is also a co-founder of the African Digital Leadership Innovation Network, and he is based in Poland. Marcin, you want to say something?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
For those who are not familiar with my person, I want to introduce myself. I am the Vice President of Chamber of Commerce Exporters and Importers. Me, myself, I work in Africa and the Near East since 2012. I work as advisor for the Egyptian government for transition projects. I was the mentor of the clusters in Tunisia, Morocco, the Lebanon. And also I'm committed in the Africa West, in the Côte d'Ivoire, Guinea-Conakry, Benin, in not only in digital projects, but also in the development. So this is, I have just arrived from the Côte d'Ivoire 2 days ago. So yes, so I have a fresh comments.
Thank you very much. And of course, we know today we have our speakers who are dedicated interest and also joining us today. And we are still expecting Professor Jela Ezin, who is the founding chair of UNESCO. And today we also have Tunde Kalai, an EU expert on science innovation, and also member of the Living Labs in Europe and in Africa. Dr. James Muli is the academic dean of the European Business University based in Luxembourg. We have Adia, Dr. Adia from Tunisia, and she is also a research expert in adult education and other educational initiatives in Tunisia. Mr. Bart Cornel is here to join us. He's with the Enabel, and that is the Belgium Development Organization based in Brussels. We have Magnus Johnson on board. Is the permanent partnership lead, strategic lead of the Middle East and Africa, works for Microsoft and based in Côte d'Ivoire. We're also expecting Professor Majadin Agahan, and he will be joining us from Libya. We also have Mr. Bankole Oloruntoba. He's the CEO of the Nigerian Climate Innovation Center in Lagos, Nigeria, and is also an ambassador of the circular economy in Nigeria. We have Mr. Mark Deboy, the Chief Executive of Ubande in Kenya, and IoT. We have Josephine Meliza, co-founder of Tuna PandaNet, a community network expert. We have Eric, who is the CEO of Wakama Incorporated and is an expert in edutech solutions based in South Africa. Dr. Ifriki is not able to join us today. He's excused himself. We'll get started probably with Dr. James, European Business University based in Luxembourg. Dr. James, please could you introduce yourself, and in 5 minutes, please brief us on what EBU is actually doing and your experience already in Africa and your other expectations, and in order to support the sustainability roadmap of e-education in Africa. Mr. James, thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Kenneth. Again, my name is James Muli. I am from Kenya. I'm a son of the soil, and if I may say that, But let me also say that I am an educator. I have been in this business of education for, let's just say, again, over 20 years. And what we are doing here at the European Business University of Luxembourg is trying to flip the script. And I mean that quite literally. And that's what I'd like to talk about. But let me just say, first of all, so that you know who I am. Again, I'm the academic dean and the founder of the European Business University here in Luxembourg. And we have over 6,800 students who are currently in our program. And we are in 85 countries globally in terms of student presence. We work with a very large number of organizations, over 48, who are essentially in Africa primarily. And these organizations are non-for-profit organizations that are in the trenches, so to speak. We work with organizations that are in the slums. We work with organizations that are looking to uplift people. And this is all available on our website because of my 5 minutes. So I want to kind of move quickly. Now, I have been an educator for a long time. Again, just jumping back to me quickly. I've taught and lectured at the university here in Luxembourg for over 9 years. But prior to that, I've been in other institutions. I've taught in China, I've taught in Germany, I've taught in the United States, thereby the accent, for better or worse. I speak French, German, English, Kamba, Swahili. I speak Chinese. I've been studying Chinese for over 8 years. Let me just put that in there because if no one's going to say anything about my Chinese, I will. It's something I'm proud about. I have been studying for 8 years, and I do speak Chinese at a C1 level. Now, let me just come back to what we're really all about. I think my 5 minutes starts now. Huh? So, first of all, everybody was talking about this a minute ago. I don't know if everybody caught that in the news. Harvard University just did broadcast that they have more income that they have received from their online campus as compared to their physical campus. Just in the news, I believe it was just yesterday. Very interesting. Now, what we have been saying and what we believe is that education is, of course, the silver bullet. We know this. But more importantly, what we're also seeing now is that technology is a huge disruptor in the Western world. Technology can be very disruptive. The legacy systems, as we call them, are shaking, they're pondering. But however, technology in the developing countries is an enabler. And this is a big difference. When I say it's an enabler, what I'm saying is that it can certainly go to greater lengths in changing and flipping this script. Let me just give you some very broad statistics, just so you see where we're coming from. The UN Population Fund stated in 2009 that the African population would double. And it's already reached the 1 billion mark, they said, and it would double in size in the course of 27 years. Today, Africa has indeed, as of the census of 2016, a population of approximately 1.2 billion. And by the year 2050, the expectation is that there will be an annual increase of 42 million people per year. All right, so the total population will be doubled to 2.4 billion. All right, this is according to the United Nations, and this comes to 3.5 million more people per month. Now, what is also very interesting, and we know this, is that the median age of Africa is a phenomenon. Right? Currently, there is a projection that the median age will be 25.4 years by the year 2050, making it the youngest continent. What we say is the dilemma is that nearly 128 million school children on the continent right, of the 128 million school children, 17 million will never attend school. All right. And this is very, let me just give you a little bit of a picture here, because this means that 6% of the children in sub-Saharan Africa will enroll, only 6% will enroll in some form of tertiary education, compared to 80% in the OECD countries. 6% versus 80%. This is from the Brookings Institute, this data, and I'm sure you can source that. The UNICEF identifies the number one significant barrier to education in developing countries being direct costs, i.e., in other words, fees, right? Clothing, books. And what we are saying is that we need to flip this script, because I indicated that we have this enabling technology. A year ago, we had 1,000 students in our program. Today, we have 6,800. We're projected to have over 10,000 students in our certificate impact program by September of this current year. We have decided that in order to flip this script, we need to have public education becoming free. So let's just think about that for a minute. Where is public education free? It's free in Norway, it's free in Sweden, Germany, Denmark, Finland, Austria, Greece, France. It's free in South America, it's free in Uruguay, Brazil, Argentina. It's free in Panama. And in Malaysia, the only Asian country, and it's free in Morocco and Egypt. But in Morocco and Egypt, it's not available to international students, and Egypt as well. Kenya, we don't have free public education. The rest of the African countries, we don't have free education. And what I'm trying to say here is that we want to change this script, because education is what brings about the social inclusion, the economic inclusion, the financial inclusion that we're all striving for. I think my time is up.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. That was very elaborate, and we appreciate your presentations. And now I move on from Luxembourg, Mr. Bankole Oloruntoba.
Thank you so much, Ken. Good morning, everyone. And
Yes,
it's a pleasure being here. It's been a rainy morning here in Abuja, Nigeria. My name is Bankole Oloruntoba, and I lead the team at the Nigeria Climate Innovation Center, which is based in the Lagos Business School in the city of Lagos. And it's quite a pleasure because Ken and I have had a few conversations around this, sharing information around pushing for more development, within the African context, and what are the types of models. And we see education as a very key component, of how that can be achieved. So when you look at how many African economies or governments have been run, you see that not so many really look at education as a strong tool for development. And I'm saying this clearly because I know that when you look through the budgets of many African countries, you see that what is being allocated to research and development, which education also forms a greater part, is about the lowest in many of these budgets. And yet this country is also demand, or rather requests, to see that there's a lot of development when there are too many shrouded reasons to why budgets for education is not taken seriously. So I think that when you look at the strength of Africa, as the last speaker has spoken, you see that that youthful population that is looking like a blessing to us can also become a huge curse.
There are some participants waiting to be added.
Okay. And these curses cannot just reside only in Africa. It should be around the world. And I think that
can you just add them, please?
Sorry, Ken, your microphone is on. And so to be able to handle growth in education, the reason why online education seems to be the key. And this is just beyond just your your four-wall classroom. I'm talking about more functional education that sort of helps you generate income immediately. So one thing you need to understand also about the African youth is that we want to learn as well as we want to contribute. So in our course of learning, we also want to contribute, because it's almost everybody's dream, to get out of whatever level of economic demography or band they have been placed on, right? And so as everybody's, learning, they also want to contribute immediately. Now, the issue we find in things like this is it sort of impedes the kind of innovation you find are sort of pain-backed innovation, not more of research-backed innovation, because everybody's going through their learning and applying it immediately without wanting to think that further to see how this can become a long-lasting institution, in the right place. So if you flip it back to how things like this can be solved, we need to look at issues like curriculum. Now, curriculum is also a huge problem because, again, many curriculum of African countries are still based in the 80s, possibly, 60s curriculum. And many still, I applaud, I think the Kenyan government have sort of approved, coding curriculum to be part of the school, every school curriculum. And that should have, sort of ripple effect across other African countries. So when we look at the role of government, we look at the role of institutions, we will see how that affects the kinds of, educational model that is being developed within that state or rather country. But where the outliers come and where lots of this hope come, again, is the issue of online education. Now, what online education does to many, as many don't understand, again, is it still helps Africans able to still contribute, learn, right? So many would rather want to have an online while they keep their job, rather than having to quit the job to go for a full-time, maybe postgraduate, degree or something. They'd rather still want to keep that job because the essence of contribution is still very key, right? The essence of contribution is still very key. So if you take, the livelihood of someone and expect the person to learn completely, we are sort of like a communal community. If you are somewhere, you've got a lot of younger ones, if you ask me, who are right under you, also, going to feed off you. To us, it's not a bad thing. To us, it is responsibility, right? And so in the course of doing that, I can tell you that 8 out of 10 homes always have someone that they have to look up to or look down to so that they can continue that growth within that community. So the essence of having to contribute while you still build or learn is also very key. So, which is why I keep saying that the way we look at curriculum and how we juxtapose that curriculum to the cultural dynamics of Africa, like you have in Japan and other places, that will help us be able to build on the kinds of innovations that are domiciled to us, innovations that sort of resonates with the kinds of challenges that we face. So, so for us to be able to see how many of these platforms, will be very much instrumental, I will say that the being able to infuse some form of African context to other e-learning platform across the world will help everyone learn more about this, this beautiful continent, and as well be able to scale the kinds of educational innovation that we're looking for in this place. I think I'll stop there, Ken, and I'll let I'll hand it over to someone else. Thank you very much.
I would like now to introduce Mr. Magnus Johnson from Cote d'Ivoire with Microsoft. You're welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Magnus Johnson. I am part of an organization within Microsoft, which is called Microsoft Philanthropies, which is basically Microsoft CSR arm. I I oversee strategic partnership across Middle East and Africa, so about 70 markets. I joined Microsoft like 10 years ago, focusing on impacting lives of thousands of youth, accessing technology to realize their full potential. In April 2020, Satya, basically the CEO of Microsoft, said something very interesting. We have seen 2 years worth of digital transformation just in 2 months. This is basically outstanding, amazing. The world has been basically changing, literally, in just 2 months. And since then, we've been moving in that direction. People have given place to technology when they were really expecting to. Microsoft for years has been very much investing in education, not only looking at digitizing education, but also look at the entire ecosystem, from policy to education, from education to livelihood, job, and all this supported by technology. Let's face some facts. According to some research, 65% of students in grade school will perform jobs that have not been invented today. 47% of jobs, current jobs, are expected to be taken by machine during the next few decades, 2 decades basically. Only 33% of the world demand for employment in technology skills is being met today. Percentage of jobs required by technology skills will increase to over 77% in less than a decade. The world is moving. Unfortunately, maybe our education system, especially on the continent, is not moving as fast. Though there's a lot of progress that have been done in that regard. And Microsoft have been putting in place so many, let's say, buckets, tools, and approach that can help us in transforming the education system, in digitally equipping the continent and move forward with it. I'm just going to pause there and let's discuss it later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate your introduction. Now I would like to call on Mr. Eric Nitschek, the CEO of Wakuma in South Africa. You are welcome.
Thank you. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, please, yes.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you, Ken. Thanks for having me. I'm going to take everybody down a tech rabbit hole for about 5 minutes. Talk about the tech in EdTech, and this is going to get super nerdy, so apologies. I can answer any questions at the end of the webinar. But my company is called Wakuma, and we're a small social enterprise, and we're working on open source hardware and software for solving challenges, global challenges in connectivity and education. What is offline? Offline is, well, we know a little over half of the world is connected to the internet. That means that there's 3-something billion people around the world who don't have meaningful internet connectivity. So this is what I'm at least for the purposes of this presentation, calling offline. It's not binary. It's not 100% offline or online. We know that it's a spectrum. So that's what I mean by offline. So what are people already doing to bring education to offline communities? Local servers. It's been happening for some time now. We see Raspberry Pis, microservers. They're increasingly powerful. They're full computers that are very, very small form factor. They're portable. They're low power, so they can be powered by solar panels, power banks, and so on. And there's amazing organizations working in this space. You have Internet in a Box. You have Kiwix that enables offline access to all of Wikipedia in every language possible. Learning Equality as Calibri, and they're bringing access to Khan Academy and OER resources and Solar Spell, and there's dozens of others. And they're amazing, and it's great for, this approach is great for certain contexts. If it's a rural classroom and you have 20, 30 students, it's great. Throw content on a Pi, or a micro server and enable access to that content. The limitations here are geographic coverage. The Wi-Fi hotspot on this is only going to be good for a room, maybe the next room over. So you're not going to cover the whole school or the whole village. Very few users. These things they're great, but they're not super powerful. You'll get 20, 30 users unless maybe they're doing media streaming, and then you're going to get even fewer users. And it's mostly static content that you see. It's not going to be dynamic. It's going to be, here's the standard content packs that we've seen for the past 10 plus years. TED Talks, Khan Academy videos, offline Wikipedia. Most of it's in English. Some of it can be localized into different languages, but for the most part, it's static content. The other thing is that it's not collaborative. It's not, there's no communications. It's not participatory, which I'll go into more in just a second. So what's the next step then? It's how do we take these servers and give access over larger geographic areas and enable more functionality? So how do we take that server in the classroom and then maybe the teacher's sitting in the classroom, but then build out the network from that server, from that school into the local community, into the village. And it's not that expensive. And Josephine, shortly, I think we'll talk about community networks as a mechanism, as a vehicle for building out community-owned and managed infrastructure. I want to talk about more sort of the technical aspects of bringing access to the local content and services. So you can build out the network. This is one solution that we're working on. It's called the Nimble. It's got a Raspberry Pi in there. It's got a more powerful server too if you want it. It's mix and match. It's modular. Hang it up on put it in your library, and then broadcast that out into the community through a wireless mesh network. Low cost. It looks expensive, but it's really not. It can be produced locally. It can be co-designed and so on. And then Mark, we can talk about like IoT integration with these types of offline solutions later. Local is the software services platform that we are building. It's also open source, that runs on the Nimble. It can also run on other local servers. It's very customizable, and it's more about production of content and localizing content. So the same things, the same applications that I mentioned before, you can do in the network, but you can also do video calling and messaging. So we're in a chat right now. Say again, the teacher's in the classroom, the students are at home in the safety of their homes, even at nighttime. That lecture can be made completely offline without any backhaul internet. People within the networks can build and run the courses. Social networking, it can be live. You can build websites. It's very dynamic. Even Google Docs type things, when you're all in the same document, typing at the same time and copying and pasting, and you can see people's cursors in that document. You can do that entirely without any internet within the local network, and of course games as well. Which brings me to the last slide. Three kind of emerging things. Well, I say emerging, but some of these have been around for some time. SneakerNet. I should preface this by saying, look at the diagram on the bottom here. We want to facilitate the decentralization of distribution of educational content. Super wordy, but we want to decentralize the web. We see Twitter now is being bought by Elon Musk. Is that a good thing to have this platform in the hands of one person that could potentially be shut down or taken in a bad direction? So this decentralization takes the power out, takes the centralization and spreads it out. So SneakerNet is one thing that's been around for a long time. It's basically, let me put a bunch of educational content on a USB stick or a hard drive, and I can hand it to you. You put it in your computer, you copy it. That's effectively what's been happening for a really long time. It's happening on the African continent widely, and it's a wonderful way to move large volumes of content very quickly. And now, my point in saying this, it's not super cutting edge, but storage is becoming more storage in smaller space. You know these SD cards. This is 128 gigs, and now you can buy terabytes and terabytes and stick it on very small cards and move them around effectively. Peer-to-peer web and mobile. This is when we think peer-to-peer, we often think BitTorrent and downloading movies and media. That's one way to think about it. But another way is like Sino browser, for example. My phone talks directly to your phone. You're in the same room as me. I want to send Josephine a message on WhatsApp. Why, if we're standing in the same room, do I have to send her the message? It goes to the internet. It goes through Mark Zuckerberg's server and then back down to Josephine's phone. It doesn't make sense. We're standing next to each other. I should be able to send you messages, send you content, communicate directly. Creates a distributed, decentralized mesh of communications and educational content sharing opportunities. So it's very exciting. And it's not just phone to phone. I can, maybe Josephine, I know is going north of the village. Well, I can send a message that she carries through her phone, and then her phone connects to 10 or 20 others. So it disseminates that information very quickly and efficiently in a decentralized manner.
Thank you very much.
Apologies. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yes.
We'll come back to you again. Now, I would like to call on Professor Gel Ezine, the founding chair, holder of the UNESCO chair on STI policy and the director of Smart Labs Systems in Tunisia.
Morning, everybody. Thank you for this invitation.
Yes.
And, I can see also some friends with us in the meeting, which is such as Tundi and Monder, etc. So thank you very much for this invitation and for this very, very important topic. Well, lately there has been, especially after the pandemics and the fact that we've been pushed without really much planning for it to really jump into the wagon of distance education. And people have been doing whatever they can to actually save the education and university from this pandemic. However, such kind of meetings tend also to focus almost exclusively on the technology or technological part of this challenge. While this is very much acceptable and needed, because technology is here, technology saved us in a very, very significant way, especially during the last 2 years. But I have the feeling that somehow we are not paying enough attention to the education itself. Be it from a pedagogical point of view, or most importantly, the harmonization, if I may say so, between our technological advancements, whatever we've discovered during the pandemics, and the education system. One big issue here is that, if we just continue teaching as we've been doing for the last, century or more, and just including technology, I don't think we will be really advancing on this level, okay? I don't think we'll be making our education system better by just introducing technology. And again, as an engineer and as a technology policy expert, I fully support the technology. But we need to marry the technology with the needs of the education system, and even what I would call the new needs in our education system. Let's face it, today, with all the existential challenges humanity is facing, be it climate change, be it ecosystem collapse, be it pandemics, shows us that our education system has failed. It's as simple as that, okay? And the grown-ups have failed. And consequently, the younger generation look at us as those who really, sorry for the word, screwed up their planet, and will leave them in a dire, situation that we caused because technology has been running the show, okay? So, and we all know that, for instance, for the last couple of decades or so, humanity has been plunged into a tsunami of information. You know, in 2016, I believe I was reading in Nature or somewhere else, humanity produced as much information in 1 year, in 2016, than it produced during its whole existence. It will take any one of us 64 years to go through, you know, the internet, to just surf on whatever was produced in one day. So here we are confronting really a humongous challenge. And we cannot just, you know, take it from the e-learning side and forget about these very, very heavy trends and drivers of our new existence. So one fundamental element do regard this tsunami of information is, for instance, the role of professors in the teaching system, in class, as well as the engagement of students. Without these key questions, I don't think we'll be able to really take advantage of whatever technology is capable of providing to us, so that we can enhance our education system and hopefully save humanity from itself. One key element here, and related to this tsunami of information, is the restructuring of the classroom, if I may say so, and the pedagogy that goes with it. From, you know, as the professor is concerned, I really believe that the professor has to change its posture in the classroom. And that is going from a sage on the stage to a guide on the side. This is very, very important. And the student has to become the center of our interest in the classroom. And the teaching and the pedagogy has to be centered around experiential learning. I believe these are fundamental elements that we have to bring into our, you know, framing, and maybe a new model of education that will take advantage of the technologies and adapt it and tailor it to this new way of educating, this new technology and the new needs and the new realities of our humanity with respect to, for instance, information. And I'm talking to you about experience that I myself lived as a professor. I've been teaching for about 40 years. And to tell you the truth, the experience I had during the pandemic was a joyful experience, if I may say so, from the e-learning point of view. I was very skeptical to really jump into the bandwagon with everybody into Zoom or WebMeet or Jitsi or what have you. I was very skeptical, but I had no choice. But I discovered that it really had many, many positive side effects, if I may call it so. Of course, you know, as we are experiencing it today, in this moment, the face-to-face, the real face-to-face can never be, you know, replaced by Zooming or what have you. But it really works quite well. You know.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. We'll come back to you, definitely. Thank you for your presentation. It's quite interesting. And now I would like to call on Tunde. Please, you are welcome. Yes, Tunde, Kale. Your mic, please.
Yes. Do you hear me now? Do you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much to invite me. I arrived to Africa 17 years ago, to South Africa at first, by the invitation of Pretoria, Technicum Pretoria. And in the last 17 years, I had many opportunities to teach and also to attend in lots of European projects and writing European projects, especially related to the education and ICT technologies. And the vision, what I would like to share with all of you, this is based on the result what I did and I made for the European Training Foundation in the last year, especially to assessing the innovative teaching and learning practices in vocational and educational training in Africa, mostly in North of Africa. And that was a real challenge to me. So what I would like to share with you, a vision to creating a Pan-African community of innovative educators. This is based on my insights and the result what I had and what I offered for the European training. Okay. So my vision is composed by 3 main points. 1, strategic objectives can be the tailor-made rapid learning courses adapted to the personal needs of the learners. It means that what can be the trends of the innovation and future prospects, what can be the harmonization between the different sectors, and also how we can assess the needs for the capacity building and jobs for the future. Of course, there's a second one is to assess the digitalization and disruptive technologies in the African e-education by 2030. It means that that would be a strategic impact assessment and sustainability in the vocational and educational training. And the third one, the most important, is the human aspect, the ecosystem. So to learn, to create a Pan-African community network of African e-education 4.0, which includes a roadmap, which includes the research and development policy and regulations, and of course, at the one, sustainability roadmap and collaborations. This kind of the innovative educators network still exists by the European Training Foundation in Europe, and also for the Balkan, and also for Asia. But innovative educators community doesn't exist yet in Africa. And what I would like also to tell you, why is important the tailor-made rapid learning and the courses which can be adapted to the personal needs. Because the content, and you emphasized the needs and the necessity of the good curricula, the content, which follow the occupational competencies and skills, social and civic competencies, cultural awareness and expression, critical thinking, creativity initiative, problem solving, risk assessment and decision taking. Those are about the learning outcome. Secondly, what can be the materials and the resources? And I was so happy to listen the South African approach regarding the digital tools, textbooks, non-verbal learning, equipment, and others. And of course, that the role of the teacher and the learning environment is also crucial. So that's why what we did and what I did in the last 1 year in North African countries, and plus we added Lebanon and Jordan to my work. So that was about the innovative teaching and learning practices, evaluating and creating a grid of the innovative practices. I had to collect 20 innovative practices from different countries. Finally, that was screened by the European Training Foundation. And this is just a few examples which was selected by them. For example, from Tunisia, that was the development of the organic vegetable supply chain for tomatoes and hot peppers, new ways of growing the future, which includes the tailor-made training in the greenhouse using the ICT technologies, artificial intelligence, big data, machine learning, etc., in the education. The secondly was also selected from Egypt. This is also based on the and also on the only in the Arabic language. This is a mobile application where the students can choose and attend in the different online courses. That was again another one from Tunisia, from Tunis, where I also participated to creating a living lab in the digital art and animation and gaming and interior design using the ICT technologies. And also from Egypt, they are working and doing every year a local, regional and international IoT and AI challenge, which is based on the robotics. And this is also very, very interesting as a best practices. Okay, go to the next one. Next slide, please. Yes. So as you see, this is a kind of the ecosystem where we can say that the environment is very important, the assessment and result of the needs and adapting the needs for the learners, and also objective, desired, expected outcomes, which is all the time the core and focus in the new curricula. And of course, that the outcomes can be also make a follow-up or feedback, because the innovative practices can be always in the focus on the national, mainly on the national vocational and educational training. Okay, go to the next one, please.
I think
yes. Okay, we arrived to the end. We arrived to the end.
With some specific questions.
Kenneth, I arrived to the end of the vision. So yes, the vision is to create a network of innovative teachers, and of course that will be related to the adaptation of the needs in all kinds of the technologies and content.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We'll come back to you. Now we'd like to call on Josephine Meliza from Kenya. You're welcome, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Ken. I'll request to keep my camera off just to save on bandwidth.
Okay.
Yes. So thank you for the invitation. My contributions today will be on bottom-up approaches to meaningful connectivity. And foundational to our discussion today is the issue around access to affordable and reliable internet access. But the reality is that only about 28% of the population in sub-Saharan Africa have access to internet connectivity compared to 49% globally. And unfortunately, internet growth is stagnating, and this is because we've connected the easy half, and the areas where remain unconnected do not make a business case for commercial operators. Hence the need for community networks, and these are bottom-up citizen-driven networks that are deployed, operated, maintained by communities in a way that's aligned to their local needs and priorities. The advantage that community networks offer is beyond access to connectivity. They also address other issues such as access to learning or capacity building, so that we are not just so that people that are connected also are able to utilize technology and internet access. So we have quite a number of community networks in Africa, over 22 currently, and they support the communities in different aspects. This includes building of local digital capacities, hence promote the driving of adoption of technologies, training and developing of a skills workforce in local communities, hence contributing to livelihoods, as well as fostering local innovation, such as the development of digital platforms. So it can be things that to do with cultural preservation, or also just education platforms or entrepreneurial platforms. So I just want to share two key reflections as working with communities. And these are, because we work with grassroots communities, this includes schools, as well as just like the youth in the different communities. And we learned that when it comes to even the platforms, there's need for them to be able to adapt to the local context in a way that allows for meaningful two-way interactions, whether it's between the learners or the teachers. Because when we look at how learning has been happening in the African context, is that it's very conversational. And so even with the technologies themselves, they also need to adopt to how learning was done in the past, but also currently, so that it's not things that are far removed from the local context. It's also important that we look to create a dynamic ecosystem. It's also important that we take a dynamic ecosystem approach so that we are bringing different stakeholders, whether they are in the educational sector, so that we are able to align our capabilities as well as share resources in order to accelerate the effort. So from the room, today we have different skill sets. We have people in research, people in the development of platforms. So if you're able to take an ecosystem approach so that whatever solutions we are coming up with are actually relevant to the different communities that we are targeting. Then lastly is the issue around the need to build local capacities. I remember when we started our network in Kibera, that is an informal settlement in Kenya, in Nairobi, Kenya. One of the challenges we faced was not just in the deployment of the technology itself, but actually getting the people in the communities to be able to understand the value that this would bring them. And going to schools, for example, teachers, you find that teachers, especially in the Kenyan context, they are overworked and underpaid, and so they don't want additional work to already their strained effort. So if it's a solution, they want something that it's very easy to learn, very easy to adopt in a way that it reduces their work, but not adds additional struggles to their already dire environment. So understanding that they play a very critical role as to whether these solutions will be adopted. And so we need to support them in terms of development of the digital capacity, as well as we develop digital and pedagogical tools that will enable teaching to go on effectively, whether they are in person and or remote settings. So there needs to be also a marrying of the remote type of learning environments as well as the in-person learning. And beyond that, it's also looking at the role that parents play, especially with the pandemic. We saw that most of the learners had to stay at home. And so parent involvement becomes very critical as to how the solution will be well adopted and utilized. So we need to put and also prioritize strategies that are able to provide parents, to provide guidance to parents and equip them with the tools that are required to help them in supporting their learners.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Josephine. We'll come back to you during the discussions. Now I'd like to call on Dr. Hedia Salami from Tunisia. You're welcome.
Thank you. Could you please, the slides. Yes. In fact, according to me, to improve our education and to go to the e-education 4.0, we have to take into account the four elements which are concerned by the education. The four components, which are the learner, the teacher, the environment, and the content. The teacher, concerning the teacher, I think that to improve our education and to be up to date, it is important to take into account the continuous training of teachers, because teachers, even if, as my colleague said, their role will be changed, but they are an important component in this ecosystem. So we have to take to improve the continuous training of teachers, which is not really take in mind that it doesn't have a very importance, unfortunately. And once they are up to date to a new strategy and a new approach of teaching, they will change their attitude when they are teaching. This online training, or this continuous training of teachers will certainly help them to use and to introduce ICT in their strategy. The second component or the second element is the content. As mentioned before by some colleagues, the content is very important and it should be up to date, but we shouldn't miss that this content is not, should be specific to each country, to each lack of knowledge. And we also, or what I propose is to use more, not only the e-learning, I mean, not only the ICT, but also a new strategy which is the collaboration online international learning via projects or via what is nowadays called laboratory. The third component is the learning environment. And when I introduce learning, or when I present learning environment, it doesn't mean schools or classical schools. It may be classical schools, it may be learning management environment, it may be also non-formal environment, which should be taken into account, because nowadays students or pupils use it as a resource of information and of learning. And then I introduce or I present the students, which are the main component or main element in studying, as my colleague said. It is true that our organization should be around the students, and we have to, let's say, use different channels to communicate with students. Because in Africa, it is true that we have many, let's say, technical difficulties, but there are many ways to communicate. We should also use the old channels with radio, TV, and the pandemic showed us that these channels are very important. We discovered that many countries, essentially in Europe, use the TV or TV channels to communicate with students, essentially in the primary level. So we have to use different channels, old and new channels, to communicate and with students, essentially those with having a difficulty with ICT. I also would like to mention that, according to me, education is more as important as the financial aspects. So I just would like to mention that in Africa, the financial aspect, or the e-money, that's what it's called, or e-currency, was the problem of e-currency was more or less reduced with what is called the phone, mobile phone in Africa. This has great success. So why not, according to the importance of money, the importance accorded to money, why not accorded to education too? So for some countries or for some environment where ICT is not available, we can use other channels as money. So the digital, let's say, channels may be used, or women may be inspired for this, from these experiences. And this is concerning the different, let's say, possibility or the different elements composing the e-education, the education 4.0. I should also mention that having difficulties or having the ICT difficulties shouldn't discourage us from taking into account the new technology, such as virtual reality, augmented reality, and so on, because Africa is we have different environments. We have environments which are up to date, and we have environments which have many difficulties.
Thank you very much. I will come back to you. Yes, thank you for your contribution. We'll come back to you again during the discussions.
Okay.
Now I would like to call on Mr. Demark from Ubande, please. You're welcome.
Yes, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on where you are.
Yes.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, please, go on. Yes.
So my name is Mark Blois. I am the CEO and founder of Upande Limited, a Kenyan company that's been operational for about 13 years. And we deal with technology, particularly focusing on bringing affordable, transformative tech solutions to the customers that we serve, whom historically have largely been found in the water and in the agricultural space. So we do that on the one hand by using cloud-based solutions, ERP systems, enterprise resource planning tools, which are affordable, scalable, but of course, as has been discussed and is well known, accessibility in big parts of Africa is still an issue. So for that reason, we've also been taking some of the technology and seeing how we can make it affordable also in an offline, off-grid situation. And we're currently doing that with a project in the humanitarian space, where we are not just taking the ERP solution, but also the sensor solution, the Internet of Things, taking data from the physical world and gathering it over a long distance and availing that in a local setup, which we're calling now Upande in a box. So basically, very similar to some of the other initiatives that have been mentioned by Wakoma, where, for example, the focus is on content and on connectivity. But in our case, what we're offering is functionality when it comes to the ERP, as well as also the IoT, the Internet of Things, for gathering data about the physical world, which can still work in an offline, off-grid setup, gathering data over 20 kilometers or so by default, but also with some of the peer-to-peer opportunities that are presenting themselves. A mesh network can also be built out, even in areas where mobile network operators traditionally don't have any coverage yet. So we are at the same time also working with some international schools in Kenya to also now basically develop curriculum materials around using such offline, off-grid technology, including also experiential learning modules for also the solar aspects, because in essence, these kits can of course fully run on solar, and with sustainability becoming more and more important, we are basically capturing also educational materials that will allow youth to replicate systems like this, to build upon them, to be able to run them themselves, to understand them, including also the solar performance tracking, which is in essence an IoT module, seeing what the effect is of tilting the solar panel, comparing AC versus DC power. How can you basically maybe displace as much water as possible with either the AC solution or with a DC solution, and really from an experiential point of view, letting the students learn the benefits of each of the different setups that a solar system can also provide. So, because we are aware that, as much as there's new transformations going on, the fourth industrial revolution is upon us. Connectivity is still very much a problem. So in Africa, it's estimated that about 22% of the people have internet. In some countries, it's a maximum of about 42%, but there are countries like South Sudan where only 8% of the people actually have access to connectivity. So there are still very big steps to be taken. And of course, companies like Google and Facebook and Starlink are all fighting for market share, but it's hard to know exactly when that connectivity will be there, because an estimated $100 billion is still required before now the universal internet access can be obtained according to the World Bank. So in the meantime, there's still a big need for hands-on, offline, off-grid education. So from the tech point of view, which fits us very well as a tech company, we're very open to see how we can work together. We've already worked together with Wacoma, but also with ADL-INNET and other partners on the call, but also with new people as we build also this community of seeing how e-education 4.0 can become more and more a reality. And look forward to the further discussions and deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your presentation. And now I think we have covered all the speakers. So right now, I think we're going to our discussion session. And now I would like to bring our attention back to the focus of our discussions today. And of course, to see how we can contribute towards the sustainability roadmap in Africa, and what exactly is missing, and of course, what can we say, especially in respect of leveraging, harmonizing elements between the social space, the industry, the academia, and in the government circles. So who is doing what, and how do we encourage this harmonization? And of course, with the questions which we have gathered from various engagements in the ecosystem, I would like now, probably I've shared these questions already with you. And would like to take the first question, which is very, very important. And this is, are you in support to have e-education replace the traditional in-person classroom in the future, or to complement, taking into account the rising reception of online study recently, especially during the pandemic? So I would like Professor Gel to take the first shot. Thank you. Is Professor online?
Yeah. Thank you for your question. It's, I believe, one of the key questions of this meeting. Again, many of our panelists here spoke of the fact that access to the internet in many parts of the world, is missing, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. So that is an important issue we need to keep in mind. So if we go, full force towards e-education while keeping maybe half of the students outside of the system, that would be really a huge mistake. So we need to think really deeply about this issue. But coming back to your question, my experience, and I'm going to talk about really, using distance education, discovering, distance education, and trying to adapt to it so that we can, take advantage of it as much as possible. I fully, for the last 20 or 30 years, this e-education thing was there, and we've seen so many formats of it. And one of the latest, not that new, but relatively new, are the Moocs, for instance. So at the beginning, we've seen really a great hype about the Moocs, and many people produced these Moocs, and even, of course, many students took classes through these Moocs. But the overall outcome, I would say, as a teacher myself, wasn't as expected. okay, and consequently, the face-to-face, in situ, kind of teaching remained the actual standard. However, our experience during these last 2 years, because of the pandemics, made us discover that if we really try it and give it a true chance, then we find out that there is a lot to be done and there is a lot to be taken advantage of. And as I said earlier, I myself tried that and found that indeed, e-learning can be of great help. For instance, I was using myself very standard kind of tools, Jitsi, Zoom, or web meeting. And as a matter of fact, being on the net, being on my laptop, as well as my students, made it extremely helpful, for instance, and useful to really go to the internet or ask my student to go to the internet and look up, some issues, pull documents, videos, and consequently have a better illustrative capabilities than being in the classroom and maybe doing it, in the usual framework. So I fully agree with it. I fully support it. But again, I go back to what I said early on. We were pushed to really use, this framework during the pandemics, but I think we need to bring in teachers, we need to bring in technologists, and even maybe, education policymakers to really conceive of a new, technological framework where we can really deliver our teaching as best as we can. And I think we are still far away from that. Today, people are talking about AI, about IoT, and what have you, but I believe these remain mainly more of hype than really reality that are bringing strength and capabilities to the teachers as well as to the students, including also those who are in charge of planning and the education process. And before closing, I have one sentence, please. And before closing, I would like also to insist that we cannot also keep teaching as we are using it, as we are doing it now. I believe trying to teach critical thinking is fundamental. We haven't done that enough. Teaching students to learn by themselves is also fundamental. And taking advantage of this humongous capability of the net is also something very important without falling into, of course, choosing the wrong material. I believe these have to be at the center of our interests, and we should not just be working with technology without giving these dimensions full attention. And before the end of this meeting, I really would like to carry with you a very quick foresight exercise that probably will give us a better way of visioning the future of education and technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I will come back to you. You mentioned critical learning actually is missing, and we'll elaborate a little bit more on that when we'll come back. And now I'd like to take on Adia Minri Selami. Adia, please, your contribution.
Thank you. Indeed, I would like to to mention the two things related to this question. The Tunisian experience, we have what is called the virtual university, which provides courses, online courses since 2001. And my own experience was on 2005. I used the online training with the students. And some of them were really against online training, because they justify this by, I paid not for having a screen, but for having a teacher face-to-face. This was on 2005, but from 2005 to 2020 or 21, students changed, their minds changed, and nowadays students are encouraging and are asking for online training, because this reduces many difficulties and so on and so on. So what I would like to say is having online isn't enough. Having only online training isn't enough. Having what is called blended learning is really the ideal strategy, but this couldn't succeed without policymaker encouragement, because I told you since 2001 we have the virtual university, but pupils and many teachers were not engaged in this. Why? Because they were not convinced. I also would like to mention what Tunda said concerning an African entity related to online training, or I would like to say that there are many experiences. I introduced the Tunisian experience, virtual Tunisian university. There is also the Senegal virtual university, and there is also an African virtual university. I don't know where is it now, but it exists since let's say 10 years. But the problem is the engagement or the being convinced by its importance. And as I said before, if we give education should be considered at the same step that managing money, by regarding or looking at education or the importance of education at this level. African could or can be or can evaluate. That's it. Was I what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I call on Valerie, please, your contribution.
Yeah, okay. I'm very glad to be with you. It's a discussion we had already in Canada. I'm full professor at UQAM in Montreal, and we also, as everybody everywhere, sometimes these years need to go online for most of the courses. As Edia said, I think you can imagine that the virtual university is already there since a long time, since in America too, because we have a very large country. So, and some of the times during winter, you cannot move, at least your car or something. So we already have private and public virtual or online universities since more than 2 decades. So I think in Africa too, I went to a joint venture about UQAM and some of them in Africa. So I think it could be something learning from them because they already have some way to teach online. I think also, that is my first point. Some 2 points I want to refer at some other point already made this morning. It's about the question of posture of the teacher. I think I went to a training during this pandemic to teach online. And one thing I remember is we are not a teacher, we are even producer. So this is my my favorite action to remember. We are even producer. We are not a teacher. So we have to think in another way to teach online. That's true. And as a first point I want to make, it's also related to what Edia said already. It's about blended teaching and or hybrid teaching. We already have made a lot of studies about what we should do. And it emerged from the students in America, in Canada, and also what I've already done in France too. It's emerged that we have to keep classroom from some special events like experimentation or like a different type of simulation or say use play, something like that. For also social aspect, because most of the studies already done about online teaching and so on, or learning from the people engaged in this type of things, is they don't have access to social life, and that's a problem. So I don't know what to could do about that, but I think it's very important. I went and I walk already in Africa, and you can imagine what that means, social life in Africa compared to social life in Canada. And I think the social life, I know that the social life in Africa is more richer than in Canada most of the time. So I think we have to think also about that. We didn't speak about the social aspect, but I think it's very important. That's my point.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I call on now on Magnus Johnson, please.
Thank you so much. A very interesting question. Maybe I will start by saying that digital transformation is about people, right? It's about how can you enable people to do more leveraging technology. So basically, people is at the center of it. Whether we bring it online or offline from an educational standpoint, it's always important to remember the component of human in this mechanism. And we do believe that when we do understand that the method that we need to put in place in the continent should suit the continent, the needs of the continent, the need of the people, looking at what have been done and how can we do it better, looking at the power that we can bring in leveraging technology. And one of the key things that we've been actually looking at doing is how can we simplify the process of learning, making the process of learning suitable to the 21st century and the new changes to the fourth industrialized revolution, taking into consideration as well that what students are learning in school and the method that is used for them to learn in school is should be definitely what they're going to see when they join the company. Remote work is basically the future of job. So basically, the way people used to work before is no longer the same way. People are really considering remote job as a strong component of how livelihood should be taken into consideration. Looking at how future of job is taken into consideration as well, like things like freelancing, etc., as a way forward for youth. It's important to look at the training aspect, being online, for them to have that spectrum of understanding and learn knowledge, and also the spectrum, the component of having as well the offline component, which is also key. But whether we're going to be online or offline, there's also quite a bunch of things that need to be addressed, going from policy, how we enable, we ensure that what we're teaching and what we're actually doing, putting in place makes sense and resonates with local reality. And when we're doing some research back then, we noticed that only few countries in the continent actually are putting reforms that are really suitable for e-education, taking into consideration e-learning, etc. in the mechanism. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now call on Tunde, please. Your mic is muted, Tunde.
Okay, sorry. I would like to come back to the comments of Hadia and to talk about the source of the curricula and also the responsibility of the policymakers. Because when I was in Tunisia several times and we had a discussion, for example, about the Tunisian higher education system, we realized, and also since in the last year's work with several countries, I realized that when a donor organization coming to Africa, like from any European countries, they bring themselves the content, the curricula. They bring themselves, for example, the necessary ICT technologies. What can be the ideal roadmap for Africa for the next 10, 15 years? That the adaptation of the ICT technologies should be based on the local content and the local creators of the content. So the teachers should be much more educated than they was educated until today. That would be also so important to address this question and this necessity for the national higher ministries of higher education or research. For example, in every country. I would like to know, is it any good experience, good practices in any African countries related to this kind of the teaching of teacher problems and the practices? Because that will be also a crucial question to creating the necessary content for the future by the African teachers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that actually brings us to the next questions, really.
May I?
In terms of, yes, please.
May I add something, because I really appreciate what Tunde mentioned.
Yes.
My experience working, you know, this is the worst thing is to copy paste solution. This is completely out of the box and it's completely not fit to the local circumstances. Even inside the sub-Saharan Africa, the differences between the like Benin and the Nigeria or I don't know, Kenya is so big. So inside the Africa, this is the several different zones or like regions, which is completely in a different manner. You know, the Africa West is a French manner of education, completely different mindset. But what I wanted also, the Tunde indicated on her presentation, or indicated in her presentation, is that what we miss really, we miss the real strategy of country, which the roadmap of which should indicate the way of the process of the achieving some goals. So what we discuss, and I also observe here, it's this is like a switching from the one topic another topic, you know, talking about the technology, but in fact, first we should understand, or even African must understand what they really want to achieve. And I've been in Côte d'Ivoire, and I have a contact with Mrs. Linda Valle, which is from the Foundation for Young Entrepreneurs in IT. But it's located in Grand Bassam, so Magnus Johnson should know this place. This is the Techno Park. And then what we discuss is completely out of any policy, national policy of development. When we discuss with the policy makers, we discuss about the certain problems without any tackling any certain basic problems. So what you want to achieve, where you want to go, what you want to achieve in the long run, how can you improve the society. This is very important. This is the lack. That's why I mentioned in our early discussion before we started, but I think this is also what ADL-INNET should deliver to our partners. We should deliver the approach, how can we develop that this process of education, and how can introduce the education which will bring the added value to the society, to protect, to prevent people from moving out of the Africa, to stay in Africa and, you know, disseminate their knowledge and, you know, to have an impact of local society. In Africa, when I met people in Côte d'Ivoire, they discussed, we are waiting for the visa to France and we move out. We are waiting for visa in September and we move out. So who will stay in Côte d'Ivoire? That's why I think this is about the strategy and environment, the system for development, and, you know, that the understanding that it's not like a particular interest of every person, single person, like a politics, I've met with Mayor of Cocody, Mr. Yase. I've met the Mayor of the Azagi. I've met the Mayor of Abobo. I've met the Mayor of Plateau, and there is no one common interest. This is the single interest of every person to develop their own business. So if we are not be aware, and Africa will not be aware, so they will be not able to deliver their own content, because the content is based on the on their expectation and the plan of development. That's why this is very important, Tunde. And I think it's very difficult at the same time. So not to solve the single problem, but to solve the complex or to deliver the complex vision of development of the country. So this is my contribution. Sorry for.
Thank you very much. I think really what you have said is also in line with the questions I actually want to ask next. And this is that there are several e-education, e-learning platforms springing up in Africa, you know. Is there a mechanism that could help in order for us to see if the content delivery is being regulated in respect of supporting Industry 4.0 journey in Africa? The content, really. The new startups, entrepreneurs, or springing up, you know, deploying e-learning, are they under any supervisory authority? And this is actually very important in order for us to be able to track the content delivery. Are they in line with the Industry 4.0 journey, especially in Africa? So that is another point which I think we should discuss about. Anybody interested to take up on this? Magnus, please.
From Microsoft's standpoint, we've been actually putting in place a mechanism that help tracking. It's been very much important for us to see what has been delivered, how it has been delivered, and the solution that we're putting in place take into account from conceptualizing around the student to the teacher to the entire system. This is number one. Number two, one of the most important things is also to look at a wider approach when it comes to education. There's the formal one, which is very much in school, looking at how we can put digital tools like e-learning platforms that can help you go to attend the content online, go online and access the trainings, but also how we're also looking at those who are also falling out of the system, those who are not very much looking into furthering the education, or who have not been actually equipped enough, or who have been given opportunity enough to actually further the education. And for each of this youth group population, specific tools have been put in place. For instance, one of the most interesting one was to work with the African Development Bank in putting in place a e-learning platform that is very much enabling us to support youth across the continent who have basically been looking at having digital skills. The tools have been very much vetted against different entities like UNESCO or any this educational institution have been looking into this curriculum and this content that have been made available, but also look at a broad spectrum of people who are really playing a key role against around the education system. So online, so being able to track this content and the impact of this content on the lives of students online, but also look at equipping communities in different locations, giving them the right skills and the right tool for them to also track the impact of this training that have been delivered, of this curriculum that is being delivered. This is one. This is basically for those who are very much out of school. For those who are in school, we've been putting in place solutions that are based on Microsoft technology, going from Azure, BI, which is very much intelligence, power intelligence, and giving the opportunity for us to have an understanding of what has been delivered, how it's been delivered, what is the impact of what is being delivered to youth, etc. So this is very much an integrated approach, integrated system that we work with government. We work with government in putting in place this solution. We just don't come in around school and just put in place a solution. We work with government, think through the process of education. What are they looking at in terms of training youth, training the student across the continent? But also look at countries where the situation has been difficult, where they've not been actually they are in a situation, maybe war or conflict, which is not enabling the system to be very effective when it comes to providing digital skills or providing education to students. So one of these programs is, for instance, Learning Passport is a program that we've actually put in place with UNICEF, which is taking the conventional education curriculum, putting it in a platform that is enabling online learning and being able to track the progress of students who are eventually not going to school physically, but also can still access digital content, still access curriculum, formal education content on a digital platform for them to also have the opportunity of realizing their full potential.
Thank you very much. And Edia, please, your contribution.
Oh, thank you. In fact, I would like to mention 2 points. The local content is very important, but content should be up to date also, and to follow the progression in different fields, as my colleagues mentioned now. And I also would like to answer the question of Tunde related to the vocational training of teachers. I would like to present the example of Tunisia here. We have an institute which is called Institut Supérieur de l'Éducation et de la Formation Continue, which is essentially dedicated to the training of teachers in the secondary and the primary schools. However, I have the opportunity to teach such students, let's say, in master degree, which is called New Technology of Teaching. And my experience is after the pandemic, teachers now are asking that courses become online because it is more comfortable for them. But the problem is that these courses are not compulsory for all teachers. So to have our teacher up to date, policymakers should oblige them because, to be up to date, to have to subscribe or in master degree. This should be a strategy throughout Africa, for example, to have our teachers up to date, because without being obliged, they will not be up to date. It becomes voluntary, it stays voluntary, and this is not enough to have good teachers, good contents, and also good students. That's why. Thanks.
Thank you, and very interesting contribution. Really, I think that brings me to the next question, which really resonates with what you have just said, and this is more about the educational agencies and policies. The situation today, are they really in line, aligned with the objectives of Industry 4.0 education in Africa? Is anybody willing to take on this? They are supposed to be the regulatory authorities. Are they actually, their policies, are they also in line with the objectives of Industry 4.0? Because we can cite this also already in several regions in Africa. Some regions are actually moving faster than some. So I think there's some little regulatory problem here, really. And Magnus, please. Yeah.
I was mentioning a little bit earlier around the progress that we're making around policy, and I attended a very interesting forum presentation by the African Union, and I think IDEA, if I'm not mistaken the name, is an entity under the African Union who is doing some very interesting research around education on the continent. And they pull out a very interesting report. I think you can have it online directly on the African Union platform. Outside of the 54 countries in Africa, you only see 5 of them who actually are scoring decent, I would say average, when it comes to digital transformation, digital education, digital policy that they're implementing. So only very few. If we say, so it means that 49 countries are really not doing much to actually enable the system to accommodate technology in the education system. Agencies across all these markets are trying to do, most of them are piloting programs that are very much toward transforming the education system, but also show value around the impacts that this can bring. But you will still find very few actions that are taking end-to-end the entire ecosystem, from the curriculum creation to capacitating teachers to enabling the environment for students before actually accessing, providing access to employment. Another key things here is the power and the impact that we bring in when leveraging private sector. The thing is, in most countries, the role of private sector has been very much like those who are providing employment. So they're not very much playing a key role beyond the employment section. So it's very much important. And some organizations, some agencies are seeing that more and more, but there's the need of putting a structure in the framework around the role of private sector in providing guidance into the job market today. In 2020, when the COVID breakout, Microsoft did a very interesting study with LinkedIn and the team, and we've been basically able to identify 10 most in-demand roles. Unfortunately, what we're actually noticing is we're training students for the sake of training, providing them with skills, but actual skills that can actually land them in jobs and not really been taken into consideration very strongly. And I was very amazed when I wouldn't mention the country, I was in the country on a business trip recently, and I was discussing with a nonprofit organization who was basically training youth. And I happened to notice that she mentioned to me that, oh, Magnus, do you know that we're receiving students who have been graduating from with a master's degree in technology, in the computer science, but actually these people never actually touched a computer. They never touched a computer. I was really astonished. I was like, really? How can you go for a master's degree in technology, in digital skills, in computer science, and you have actually never touched a computer? You've never seen it, because this education system is not actually being enabled enough to be able to provide the skills across, which is taking into consideration the infrastructure, the policy, the curriculum, etc., for us to be able to say we're actually equipping our environment. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Tunde, over to you, please. Your mic is muted.
Oh, sorry, I always forget it. Okay, so I would like to go back to the Industry 4.0, or more and more we are calling Industry 5.0, because the human aspect coming back again to the mass production. So when I think that all of you have heard about the smart specialization strategy of the European Union, and the smart specialization strategy is more and more harmonized with the African policies as well, or policy makers as well. I know already the introduction of the smart specialization strategy is already accepted in Tunisia, also in Rwanda, also in South Africa, probably in some other countries as well, but I have no knowledge about it. But to adapt the smart specialization strategy more in the vocational and educational training, it's refer to the needs of the industry, of the society, and of the young engineers because it's so important that after the pandemic, the society and the world has been changed and more goes on the customer demand. Customer can be, for example, the learner, and we can talk more and more about the on-demand learning, on-demand based learning, vocational and educational learning. So Industry 5.0 or 4.0, 4 or 5.0 or Food 4.0, for example, we are also talking about it, would be very important in the next generation of the learners and teachers. The main question is how the teachers, for example, can be ready to create a curricula based and adapt this Industry 4.0 and 5.0, which normally are the main fundamental basis of the local and national economies. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And I see that the fundamental elements also needs to be taken more seriously. And of course, we have to think how we strengthen this in the sustainability roadmap. And that brings me to the of our social space. And of course, how do we leverage harmonization, synergy in the social space and the industry, the academia, the research, and of course, the government in the government circles. And this brings me now to the community questions. I would like now to engage Mr. Bankole Olorutoba. You are in the social economic space. That is the circular economy space. And I want to believe this is an industry. And of course, you like to communicate the value of the importance, the impact of circular economy on our environment. How do you communicate this to the remote in the urban, and of course to ensure that everybody is well engaged for them to understand the societal responsibility towards the environment? Mr. Bankole, please, you are welcome.
All right, thank you so much, Ken, and thank you everyone who have shared, information before me. Many of your comments and responses are something that will also resonate to, and I also understand when when Magnus spoke about the director, the masters in computer science, who've never touched a computer before. And it reminded me of how in one of the schools, ABU, which is one of the leading public schools in Nigeria, how some people have degrees in computer science and they've never seen a computer. In fact, they teach things like Fortran and all that. I'm sure Magnus will be laughing at that. But anyway, around climate innovation, I think that being able to create a communication model is really very key. For us, what we've done over time is to sort of understand the different categories of people that we are dealing with when it comes to climate change and the role of education. So our mix generally, when we're dealing with an ecosystem, and I've used this in, when I was teaching in the tech ecosystem, when I started the first incubator in Abuja called an Inspire Incubator, and formed something called Network of Incubators and Innovators in Nigeria, which I'm still going to come back to Magnus, sometime in the future to discuss some possibilities. I really think that being able to know how the ecosystem works of the different groups of people that play within that ecosystem helps you know how to channel the best of resources for easy understanding. So you can't use a one-size-fits-all, when it comes to dealing with people. When it comes to a certain demography, you have to use the language of that demography. When it comes to a certain group of, businesses, you also have to speak that same language. But for us, we thought about it that let's look beyond just, economic categories, right? Let's really look at social categories, and let's look at people within, the bottom of the pyramid, people with not that much formal education, who are constantly being affected, by climate change. They are the ones who are really vulnerable when it comes to climate change. And these groups of people, being able to communicate in the simple language that they understand, helps them learn more around the impact of climate change. So what did we do? We held a pilot program in Lagos where we focused on public schools, right? We have the private schools, the well-attended schools where, you know, they have A-levels and do the foreign trips and that. But no, we chose the public, the public schools, because this public schools sort of represents a nucleus of the types of families that are always being affected by climate change. And we started a program called Students with Awesome Green Ideas. And this program, first of all, had to teach the teachers how to teach the kids about climate change. So it was important that there was a train-the-trainer model somewhere around that line, because you really don't want to speak over the head of the target of the people you want to reach. And you also have to fit it within their level of, economic curriculum. So even if I'm telling you about solar panel, I'm likely going to break it down in very simple sense of what it means, for a 10-year-old or 12 or 13-year-old to know what a solar panel is. So it took a lot of effort for us to come up with a simple document that can help students, within that high school grade between 10 and 17 or so, learn a lot around green economy, climate change innovation, adaptation and mitigation. So that was one set, right? And what did that lead to? What we saw at the end were that the students wanted to create innovation from what they were taught, right? For many of them, it was a new knowledge, and they're willing to let it go. And one other thing that I've come to realize again is that if there's one thing we miss a lot, is understanding the role of local dialects when it comes to education, right? We all speak about China, we speak about Japan, even across Europe, Germany and co, right? You have your schools or education sometimes are being taught in local languages. And now English is a borrowed language for all of us, right? There are lots of conversations that are missing because of summaries, right? And so when English is a summarized word, or rather language, there are a few contexts in between that we just get missing somewhere along the line, right? But when you teach, say, digital skills, for instance, and that's where I wanted to talk to Magnus. I said there was a pilot we did back, I think about 5 years ago, where we attempted to teach some basic SMEs and some group of persons from a certain demography, not too well to do in terms of education, about how to use a computer. And we kept trying to speak English here and there, it just didn't work. But the moment we use Hausa to teach how to use a computer, you could see the spark in their eyes. They were super excited. And these guys, the standard commands are normal, right? You can't change the tabs and the cursors and all those different things, but you can equally teach them how to use it in the local language. And many of them, their eyes lit up. And I'm thinking that, what if we adopt some form of local languages to teach some certain kind of skills or some certain kind of knowledge? And we can see how that can change and skyrocket when it comes to how that kind of skill set is being used. And I'm thinking that if we've taught that about how to use a basic Microsoft Word, right? Imagine what will happen if we use that to teach basic programming, maybe how to use the Microsoft, server systems and all these different, kinds of skill sets that are really needed. The same thing is what we applied into the circular economy side of things. So we're running a project currently that is being sponsored by Coca-Cola. And what we're supposed to do is to deal with the waste speakers. It's also a pilot project for the next 2 years. And we're dealing with waste speakers, right, who are from the bottom of the pyramid. By this sort of category, I mean people who have maybe a formal education up to maybe grade 6 or maybe grade 7 or 10 or so, right? But I've not had anything that much advantage to do. People who do basically either work as janitors or who scavenge within within dump sites, who do waste picking across board, right? And this is a mixture of men and women, youths and co. And so for us, what we said was, if we improve the capacity of waste pickers, if we speak to them in a language that they understand, help them see how viable the plastic value chain is and what the benefit is for you to be able to scale in this business. And we tested with a small group of 10. And many of them said in their life that they've never thought that they would ever want to attend a class. In fact, it was very funny to them when their leader said, hey, I'd like to teach you guys something small. They say, are we in class? We're all here to hustle. And he responded to them that, yes, we know it's part of hustle, but hustle with sense helps you hustle faster than just using your brains. And they listened just for about 30 to 45 minutes. The guy taught them how to meet up to their target for the day. What are the issues when they face security? And these guys are like, wow, that they never thought this thing was really needed until now, right? And so they were able to tell their classmates about how they attended a small class with the master, and then the master showed them. And now about 5 other ones call the master and say, when are you going to do the next class? So this is from the waste speakers community. And when I'm saying this, I mean, these are people who have no formal education, who don't speak English, right? But the waste speaker, aggregator was able to use the local dialect to teach them the business of waste speaking. So they don't just become drones, just speaking and picking and picking without having an understanding of how to scale in that business. Because the more they scale, the more the aggregator also scales. So it's important he teaches them how to understand that business. And so if you see that across board when it comes to attitudes on how we change plastics, on how we deal with plastics, which also helps us understand that we need to create a behavioral change program. Nigeria is a youthful population. I mean, our friend from the prof from EBU also said it, that the age median is about 20-something years old, about 25 or 26 thereof. And so these guys, simple things like entertainment, comedy, and co really appeals to them, right? And so we created a behavioral change program that is quite academic in one way or the other. And we're able to use that to sort of help them engage with what it means to run, to understand climate change and plastics, right? And also, we also looked at that aspect of having to understand what the law says. And so breaking these things down to local dialect, I think it has worked a lot around how many learn on new technologies, learn about new models. Because if you look at the climate change clusters across in Africa, they are quite traditional in model. And that's because they've been doing this for such a while, and they've not ever bothered to think about structure and creating systems. So with innovation centers like ours and knowledge experts like you also, being able to help create systems around the kinds of model that they know. So we're not disrupting and changing it, right? We're rather just helping them to strengthen it with the use of technology. And so how do you tell someone, like the platform we're using, Ken, called Kudoti, how do you tell someone to upload the data sets of the number of the tons of plastic that has been collected in a day, right, on a platform without them understanding what that means, right? And so if you speak to them in their language, and funny enough, they all have smartphones and they watch skits, they watch this, they watch Instagram videos and co. But once you're able to show them how that useful is, then they can begin to use it on their own. So I really believe that, the use of local dialects, right? And then being able to understand the kinds of languages that each demography or each stakeholder speaks helps you to be able to educate them even further. And being able to understand that what impact means to funders are usually different from what impact means to beneficiaries. And we've had that conversations a whole lot of times. Understand what the beneficiaries want, and let's walk back from the answer to the question. Thank you so much, Ken.
Thank you so much for your presentation, which is quite impressive. And I look forward to a follow-up discussions later. And at the same time, I would like now to come back again to how do we ensure last mile connectivity coverage and power supply. And this is really another very critical elements in order to ensure inclusive e-education. What is missing? What are the expectations? What are the roles of industry, the government, and as well as the research and development? Do we leave this role alone to the government? What could the industry do in order to impact more reasonably their social corporate responsibility in terms of last mile connectivity? Now I would like Eric or Mark, probably Mark, I would like to start with you. Do you have, is Mark still online?
Yes.
Yes, please, Mark.
Yeah, I think indeed, let's say helping also map the gaps in connectivity is a useful exercise, because of course we know that there are still big communities that are not even connected to the power, because that's also one aspect of connectivity, and then let alone also coverage. So maps do exist on this from service providers, and I think concerted efforts to make sure those maps are accurate, just to also help identify where the gaps are, would be a useful exercise, so that we also know where the opportunities also really lie. In our case, of course, we were not focusing ourselves on providing the connectivity for internet, so to say, because of course we're coming from the angle of the sensor side, as well as the local deployment of software. So when it comes to connectivity for actual web content and educational content for a broader audience, I think it would be great to also get Eric's perspective, if Eric is still with us.
Eric, online, please, I think. Eric, I think he's online, but I don't know if he's... Okay, Magnus, please. Okay, Mark, thank you for your contribution. Magnus?
I think in this regard, it's important to understand that it's a coalition that can actually help really bring something sustainable when it comes to connectivity. There's a lot of effort that has been done by governments to, let's say, widen the reach of internet in even some places. Many capital cities are looking at really providing affordable connectivity. But also there are a few technologies out there that have been implemented to make this process easier. Microsoft have been really pushing for what we call TV white space. I don't know if you heard of this technology before. This is basically using white bandwidth to basically provide connectivity in very remote places at a very affordable price. We've been piloting a similar program like that in some countries like Kenya, South Africa. So TV white space is a very interesting approach to providing affordable connectivity. But also it's important to pull in here the role of telcos when wanting to provide affordable connectivity. In some programs, we've been actually engaging with telcos and seeing how best for platforms like e-learnings that are enabling youth to get access to learning online. How can we work closely with telcos to eventually zero-rate these platforms, or make this platform available on different type of devices at no cost? Looking at as well as other technology that can very much enabling youth to access this content offline. Once they have access to the content once with connectivity, when they go offline, they still have access to this content and they can still further the education. These are very much kind of tools and kind of solutions that we've been actually thinking through. But it's very much important to put these efforts in the middle of a coalition between governments who is going to look at policies that can actually smooth them and make easier the process of accessing affordable connectivity, looking at professionals, company, private sector, especially telcos who are already doing a lot of things in that regard, but also how can we transform or make connectivity affordable at a lower price for even remote places, to make learning and training accessible in very remote places, but also looked at how can we really work closely also with telco in zero rating or making platforms, e-learning platform, e-learning tools affordable at lower price for youth. We know that in many countries, like telcos are availing platforms like Facebook or others for free. As soon as you have the SIM card, you can access it for free. Why can't we do the same with digital learning? Why can't we do the same with e-learning platform for education purposes? So I think this is something that we should definitely look into. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think now we are at the crossroads of this webinar. Thank you so much for all the valuable contributions. And Eric, you would like to contribute now? Is your network okay now, Eric? Okay, it's not at the moment. And is there any other questions from the audience which I would like to take before we round up? Any valuable any question from anyone? And at the moment, yes, I think all what we have said today is actually in line with some of the questions which we collected from participants and some other stakeholders. And of course, all what we have said today, we definitely get to them from the recorded message which we have done today. And at the same time, I would like now to have a kind of a general opinion that harmonization between the social space, the industry, the academia, and the government circle is actually very, very important. These are very important elements in order for us to have synergy. And at the same time, to see what kind of spin-offs from industry to their host communities. And what is the link between government, regulatory and policy aspects in order to drive inclusive e-education 4.0 in Africa. And of course, we all understand that it's very, very important that we try to ensure that the sustainability roadmap is not affected. And at the same time, we also need to make sure that all stakeholders really understand the importance of working together in order to stay the live stream of the sustainability roadmap of e-education in Africa. So, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for your contributions. And I think in the future, we might need again to have a follow-up discussions, probably a conference that involves most of these policymakers. And Magnus, you also mentioned a group also in the African Union, which you engaged with, or something like that in terms of policy, that you also mentioned. And for us to see, probably in the future, we bring this group together and for us to have a very valuable discussion in order to see how Africa could really move forward, and for everybody to have a better understanding and to understand their respective roles as well as contribution, and also to make sure that the impact is very well defined and, of course, well communicated to the different stakeholders, either from the youths, the children, the elders, the employees, the companies, the employers, the research institutions, and of course, for the research institutions to also understand the expectations from the social space, from the industry itself, and from the government. And at the same time, we would like to make, I'm seeing somebody raising their hand. Tunde, you would like to say something, please, before we close?
Yes, I would like to mention to keep the group, the team, the experts, the participants together, and to create a subgroup under ADL-INNET, if it's possible, on LinkedIn or on directly on the website of ADL-INNET. and also to take it into account that there are many donor organizations in Africa, coming from Europe, coming from United States, coming from the other countries, Japan, etc., who are bringing the money, especially for the education sector. So that will be so important to join them in the localization of the training materials, the training courses, and also what I realized, the kind of the classes for the teachers would be also so important as one of the main components of the tenders, international tenders, which are deployed in the different countries. So I know that the GIZ from Germany, I know that the Dutch government has a strong interest in the education sector. It's called Orange Knowledge. This is the name from the Netherlands. Almost all the European countries has his own program. For example, Expertise Française from France. So there are a lot of donor organizations who are bringing the money for Africa to different sectors, and also to the education and higher education and vocational education sector. So I would like to propose you to keep together, if it's possible, and to repeat this kind of the discussion in every 2 months or 3 months, so temporary, just to follow which kind of the opportunities we will have together or independently in the participating countries in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tunde. And this brings me to the platform of the ADL-INNET, the multi-sectorial community. And of course, we intend to keep this group. You are the first group now on the educational tech sector in this. So we intend to continue building on this. And at the same time, next year, we are also planning a conference, and which we intend to bring most of these stakeholders together in order for us to raise more awareness, and of course to ensure that every stakeholder is implementing their own roles. And according to my my colleague, he was recently in Côte d'Ivoire, and he mentioned that he met several of the stakeholders in Côte d'Ivoire and some other countries. He was also in Togo, and he saw that the fundamental structure of Africa is not really there at the moment. They are just doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and there's no coherence, there's no synergy, and that is why we are losing track. And that is why Africa is not really moving as expected. So we need to bring these stakeholders together, and for us to have dialogue. The industry needs to be involved. Most of the industries are not really very serious about their social corporate responsibilities. This also needs to be well defined and well communicated. And at the same time, I see the impact from industry to the immediate environment, like as mentioned by Bankole in the context of the circular economy. That is a very good example of impact to immediate society. So I thank you so much for this conversation today. Thank you for your passion for Africa. And I see that there's this chemistry that is really resonating between the speakers as of today, and we look forward to the conversation. And at the same time, I'll be coming back to each one of you to see how we can all do this together. We need really collaborations in Africa. And of course, really engaging with the right authority, the right stakeholders, and that Africa really needs to be strengthened, boosted, empowered, in the sustainability roadmap. And if we don't do this, we don't have to create some kind of regrets tomorrow for our children. We need, right now, it is action, really. We need action in Africa. Enough of the too much talks, action. This is what we really need, dialogues and action. Thank you so much for your time. You have a recorded version of this webinar today. And I look forward to engaging each one of you again in respect of the conference, which we intend to host in 2023, which could be a kind of a 2-day conference. And we bring in most of the stakeholders, and we have to discuss really, about the progress Africa is making in the Industry 4.0 journey in Africa. I look forward to engaging with you again in the future. And thank you so much for your valuable contributions today. We really appreciate it. And at the same time, from next month, I think the multi-sectorial community network of platform of the African Digital Leadership Innovation Network will be ready, and we'll let you know and communicate that to you as well. Thank you for your time. It's been very valuable. I really appreciate your contributions. And at the same time, I said, thank you and thank you and thank you again. Have a nice day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes, yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.